Yes.
When we have this sort of back and forth as regards to the laws, the constitution, and the going back and forth and the political class looking for which one suits them best, how good is this for the democracy that we're trying to build?
Well, I think at the end of the day, taking it from what you have just said, the back and forth, but as somebody has rightly suggested, ought to be taken to court. The court should determine this issue, because I think what I even perceive to be the most fundamental issue really is this issue of the defection. Because there is a decision of the Supreme Court that says that once a defection does not come within the provisions of the Constitution, that member automatically loses his seat. Automatically loses his seat. So if the defection of these APC senators to PDP does not come within the purview of the Constitution, it means that they have automatically lost their seat.
But there's
so
a
the
matter
issue
in
of
court,
impeachment should not even arise.
I thought the RAPC had gone to court at some point. So
I am not aware of any case they have filed touching on this issue of preserving the seats of their members who have defected to the PDP. I'm not aware of any such matter.
So does that then
because
mean that
the conditions that the Supreme Court has set for you to defect and not lose your seat is that the party you are defecting for must have reached a stage where it is impracticable or impossible.
That's for legislatures, not for the governors.
For legislatures, not for the governors. Impracticable or impossible for that party to function as a political party. So the question is, at the material time, was it impossible or impracticable for APC to function?
They seem to interpret that differently whenever they defect. So they will always argue, because if some argue that, well, we did interview the RAPC group, and he was talking about, yes, there's a division. Those who were seated there, they didn't ask them whether they disagreed with the nomination and how the results panned out for the leadership of the APC. And many thought, but if you were there, why didn't they raise any objections if they wanted? But I says, well, that's why they want to go to court and see how they can sort that out. But now, you are saying that since there's a precedent on this matter,
yes, there is.
If you move from one party to the other as a legislature, you ought to automatically lose your seat.
Yes.
But does it require anyone going to court again to say, look, he's refused to vacate his seat and as such, please get him out?
Well, I think in order not to create a chaotic situation, of course, the ideal thing is somebody needs to go to court that, look, the mere fact that RAPC emerged is not enough. As the Supreme Court is just not a question of division. The division must be such that the party that you are leaving has found it impossible or impracticable to function. So it's not just enough for you to say, okay, we have set up RAPC, therefore anybody can defect. Does that division, has it led to APC being unable to function? That's the critical criteria.
Weigh this against what happened in 2014 or thereabout when the former Speaker of the House of Representatives defected.
Yes.
He was still a Speaker and he moved from one party to the other. How does that play out in comparison to what's happening now?
Well, I really do not think the holding of the position of Speaker or that of the Senate President is really dependent on what political party you belong to. Because really, the Constitution, in providing for how these officers emerge, says they shall be elected from among the members of that body, not from among the members of any. In fact, it makes no reference to any political party. So even the smallest political party in the Senate or in the House of Reps can produce the Speaker or the President, as the case may be, if the members. So this is a matter that is within the exclusive preserve of the members of the houses to say this is going to be our president, this is going to be our speaker. It doesn't have to be. That's nothing to. The party has no control over them.
In other words, the Constitution expects that the nationals or the legislature would be entirely independent of the political parties from which.
Completely. They are given absolute power in determining who is going to be their leader.
So if the Constitution expects that the National Assembly or legislators will be independent, but then it still comes on to say you cannot defect to another party and still be in the Assembly. How does that work?
Well, I suppose when you look at it within the background of the fact that for you to be qualified to contest an election, you must be sponsored by a political party. So it is that political party that is sponsoring you to the legislative arm of government. So if for whatever reason you feel that you want to leave the platform of your sponsor, that's almost like the foundation upon which you are standing to be in that house. So if you leave that platform, then you must leave the house, unless you can show that the platform itself has collapsed or does not exist anymore.
Even though they keep arguing that, well, they did it in 2014 at the time, they thought it was okay, people had their way, some think that's justifiable, why they're doing it now. But the thing about all of this is, while all this happens, it looks as if politicians know, they're looking for, how do I send some persons to court, knowing that the time is ticking away. And when you get to the court has got to take its time to give the judgment or whatever. And that time really does matter. Do you think that they play on this sometimes?
I think they do that all the time, because everybody knows that if you go to court now, certainly before that issue is resolved, not just at the High Court, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, the entire tenure of this house is gone. Because it's not, although the amendments to the Constitution has now placed time limits on when you can, pursue certain matters, but notwithstanding that, I do not think there is enough or sufficient time, even for the courts, to effectively resolve any dispute concerning any of these issues. Because effective resolution will entail the matter getting resolved by the Supreme Court itself.
Wow.
Because no party will accept a High Court decision. The other party will say, well, I've appealed, on and on, and then until...
What can we do about that? Because that's a challenge.
It's a serious challenge. I think part of the solution really is to reduce the number of cases that gets to the Supreme Court. In Kenya, for example, you just have a ground of appeal allowed to the Kenyan Supreme Court, and that is on an issue that raises a constitutional issue. That is all. You have no other right of appeal. But in Nigeria, we have almost like 15 grounds upon which a party is allowed to approach the Supreme Court. Practically on everything, you can appeal as of right in some regard, and then with the leave of the Supreme Court in other regards. So the Court of Appeal should be made really the final court for many of all these political cases. Everything should just terminate there.
This is something that I don't know how this is going to play out in a democratic setting at the moment. But you were talking about the challenge you have, because if not all politicians want to make sure they get to the Supreme Court before they determine their cases. Because we've seen here that most times they don't like to lose. But lawyers have a huge role to play here. Lawyers always advise their counsel in many cases. Well, I think we can try one more time, because we've seen cases that have been determined by the Supreme Court. Counsels go back to Supreme Court saying, could you please reverse yourself? So that's a challenge itself too, isn't it?
Well, I think it's just that the Nigerian Supreme Court itself doesn't have advisory jurisdiction. There are other Supreme Courts in other countries where part of their jurisdiction, constitutional jurisdiction, is to render advice. In other words, you don't need to have a case, a live
before
case,
you can go to Supreme Court.
Before you can approach the Supreme Court on any very serious constitutional issues. Take, for example, these issues we're discussing about, whether it is 2/3 of all the members or 2/3. These are issues that ordinarily any arm of government should be able to approach the Supreme Court and say, give us your advice. What is the definitive position of the law on this? And then the Supreme Court resolve the matter. I'm sure that is something that can be done within a few months. And that settles the matter with finality. But unfortunately, the Nigerian Supreme Court is not endowed with any jurisdiction to render advice. It can only take a live case, and that live case must emanate from an appeal from the Court of Appeal, or when it's exercising original jurisdiction.
All right, wow. We'll have to let it go at that point. What a morning it's been, Mr. Robert Emekwero, a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
We've also now been told that in addition to the journalists who have not been allowed to gain access to the chamber, members of staff of the National Assembly too have not been allowed to go in as well. They are outside with our colleagues, the journalists, outside. And some think, well, if that doesn't happen, if they don't allow them in, there's no way they can open offices for the senators to get into their offices or take whatever document or whatever. So we don't know what eventually will happen. So we're still trying to see how to get more word from that.
But we do also understand that no APC senator is being seen. We've tried to get in touch with them to find out what the situation is. Their phones are not going through, and information reaching us has it that they're in a meeting, or they were in a meeting early this morning with the chairman, the national chairman of the APC. We're still hoping to get confirmation for all of this.
So there you go. So many conspiracy theories out there at the moment. Boy, what can we do? But that's the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Nell Tegbe, and we'll continue to keep tabs on the situation out there.
Well, definitely. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your comments and contributions as well. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.